Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. This is James at Kartz-N-Fartz. So today we're going to do a 38 volt eco battery on a 2001 EZGO TXT. And so the batteries and everything have already been removed from the owner, but we're going to kind of do an unboxing and show you how to put a 38 volt in there. Very simple, so hang on. Guys, so I've kind of already unboxed all the cardboard Eco's going to give you. So here's what was in the box. So these are going to be your terminal covers. Also some 13 millimeter studs to tie in your cables to your 38 volt one-piece eco battery. That is a 12 volt reducer. It actually puts out about 13.5 volts, and it does come with a wiring harness. There's also a bolt kit that you're going to bolt in your charging port adapter. We're going to remove the other charging port adapter. This bolt kit here actually goes with the battery, and that's going to tie it down to your existing battery tray. If your tray's horrible, Eco does sell a battery tray, but most of them are very usable. There's your smart charger that comes with it. This is your battery gauge, LCD gauge. We're going to mount in the dash with the harness. This harness is going to have a DIN plug, 5-pin DIN plug that plugs in the side of the battery. And in this case, you're going to see a little bonus stuff. We're going to install a fuse block for accessories and future accessories, and also a USB charger for the cell phone. So all this needs to be wired through your voltage reducer, which is going to make it super simple, super convenient. So, all right, guys, you can see the battery tray here has already been emptied, cleaned out, coated the battery tray. That's actually pretty solid right now. The next step is going to be remove the charging port. One thing we're going to need to pay a little attention to is this wire right here. So this little red wire here goes all the way over to your controller. We're going to need to fire that up to the 38 volt positive, and the reason for that is so the cart will actually run. There's a safety switch in here in case you have the charging port, the old style charger, plugged in and try to take off. You won't tear a lot of stuff up, but we got to have a constant voltage to that. So we'll show you that when we get to it. So the next step, I'm going to take the dash apart and find a place where we're going to mount the gauge at. I'll show you how all that comes apart. And let's get in. Next step is going to be to remove these cup holders. I just took a flat bladed screwdriver or a button puller there, and I just pried it out. When I popped the front out and pulled the bottom up, it came right out the way. So now the next step is I'm gonna mount my gauge somewhere around in here. So I'm just gonna kind of put this here, and I'm just gonna center it right there between the two cup holders there. And the reason for that is I wanna make sure you can see the gauge and you don't have a cold beverage blocking it. So now that I've got a little mark there, make sure I know, yeah, I see it right there. Now I'm gonna measure from top to bottom, make sure that it's level, and as I reach underneath here, there's nothing behind there. So you don't want to drill into anything. So now the next step is going to be to grab your hole saw. This one here is a 52 millimeter. It's kind of a weird size. Standard, it is 2 3/64. I grabbed that off Amazon. They're not that expensive. And for me, I'm just cutting plastic with it, so I wasn't really too worried about buying a high dollar hole saw, but kind of an odd size. If you only have a 2-inch hole saw, you can always take a file and widen it up just a little bit. So let's go ahead and get that ready to be mounted. I've got my dash mounted meter hole drilled. The next step is to install the battery in the battery tray. What we're going to have to do is we have to grind these little tabs that were for the old battery retaining hooks. We need to get those out the way because the measurements of this battery is going to fit perfectly inside the tray. But these little tabs are going to keep us from doing that. So they've got to come off. So we've got the tabs ground off, and then we did put a little bit of spray paint on there just to protect it. The next step is to use this hardware kit, A8004, and we're going to mark the holes, lift the battery out, drill the holes, and that way we can secure the battery to the battery. Got the battery in place. You can see the holes are drilled, and the hardware kit that it comes with is a 10 millimeter up top, and the nut and the washer that goes on the bottom, those are 11 millimeter or 7/16. They're so close, either one will work. So I'm gonna use a 10 millimeter on the top, and I'm gonna use just for me, a little 90-degree ratchet with an 11 millimeter, get it all snugged up. Then I can just tighten it up by hand. As you're adding the charging port adapter, I use a number 3 Phillips on this side, And on the inside, you can see I put the flat washer first and then the nylon lock nut. And you don't have to get it crazy tight, but you want it to touch. All right, next I'm gonna install my gauge into the hole that we drilled. These are a little tricky to snap in, so I'm gonna go ahead and untie the wiring harness. I've got plenty of room underneath. I'm going to feed it through. So when I do bolt this up with my little U-bolt, those are 7mm nuts. And generally, if you've got a socket and you twist it pretty good with your fingers, it's going to bite. It's got some little knurls on the end of the nut there where it will not let go. But let's go ahead and get this mounted and fed, and we'll go to this. So when you're plugging in these little white connectors to the back of the gauge right there, I generally help it by just lifting up, if it'll focus in, there you go. By lifting up on that. That's very thin plastic. I've never broken one, but I don't want to. I don't want you to. So just kind of help it when you snap it in, make sure it's secure, and then go ahead and mount it back up with your little bracket. I did run my harness for my voltage reducer, which is this right here. Ran my orange trigger wire all the way up to my ignition switch, and there was a green and a blue wire, and I put it to the green wire, and that should be the switch wire. And we're going to continue on with the guys. A little fast forward here. I mounted the charger to this metal plate. We're also going to install a fuse block here, and I'll show you about that. And I went ahead and mounted my voltage reducer here. So the next step, and I'll tidy up all these wires later. The next step is I'm going to take my voltage reducer wires into my fuse block. One side's a negative, the other side's a positive. And on your wiring harness here, the wires with the ring terminals, that is what's going to go to the battery. So both of these is actually going to go to your battery, which is on the other side. And these two thick wires here are going to go to your fuse block. So it's going to feed your ground, feed your positive, and then from there, like this one, this particular cart has headlights. I'll take this bucket harness, I'll pick one fuse out, I'll put a ring terminal on it and wire your positive to the ring terminal there. And this fuse block, all these are negatives, and I'll wire the negative to there. And then later, if the customer, he has up to 6 different fuses he can use. All right, guys, so we've got the charger mounted, the fuse block mounted. What I did with the EcoBattery harness from your voltage reducer, I've got the thin yellow and the thin black is going to go all the way around here to the front to the battery. And the thick one goes, the negative's on the negative terminal of the fuse block, the red is on the positive terminal, and this whole bar system right here, that is for your ground, your negative. And then I've got my positive, and I put a fuse in as I needed it. So I've got one for my lights, and we did decide at the last minute to install a USB charging port. So I've got all that to my fuse block. So that fuse block is excited or fired up, energized by the voltage reducer. And this is just a good place. And we're gonna put the cover on there, cover it up. Probably gonna need 2 hands to get that cover on there. There you go, right there. And the next step is do a little bit of wire management and get all this taken. All right, guys, we're at the point to start wiring up the wires. You want to put the thickest cable up against the battery, so that'll be your main positive and negative. The next thickest is going to be your battery charger cables. And I said I'll straighten all this out in a second. The next one is going to be your voltage reducer, which I mounted over there on that wheel well. And we can't forget about one more wire. So this is the red wire that went to the charging port to the reed switch. I crimped on a 5/16 ring terminal. Since it's thin wire, it's just getting a signal. I'm gonna put this on the outside. Once I do all that, plugged in my gauge connector, my DIN connector, then we're gonna fire it up and just make sure everything comes. All right, guys, so we've got everything up. We fired up the battery, gauge came up, and I did pre-charge this battery. Don't be alarmed if when you first put it in there, it's at like 30 or 40%. Now, one other thing that's going to happen with a series motor cart, and I got this advice from a good friend of mine, and he's kind of a shy guy, so I'm not going to mention his name, but the headlights are on. You can see the headlights reflecting. When you go from forward to reverse on a series cart, there's going to be a slight interruption in power. So that's just part of a series cart. Nothing's going to change, but I'm using a trigger wire off of my ignition switch, and it has a momentary lapse of power to the ignition switch when you go from forward to reverse on a series cart. And as of now, I don't know a fix, and my friend does not know a fix. So I'm gonna go ahead and tidy up these wires, and take this thing for a test drive. I think I'm put my cup holders back together, but and I don't think I videoed this, but we did decide at the last minute to install a USB port, which is pretty cool. Get those on Amazon. All right, guys, so that looks like that's a wrap. So you can see I just kind of zip tied up the wires, a little wire management. We did install a fuse block on this cart. As you can see, I plugged it in. It's at 100%. Now, if you look at the bottom number, 14.4, 14.5, that's how many amps the charger's putting out. So be sure you get a charging cord, extension cord that'll be at least 15 amps. So we're gonna take it for a test drive here, but other than that, it's kind of... All right, guys, that's it. Another Eco battery in the books. The customer's gonna be very happy. Got an 8-year warranty, no maintenance. He's got a very nice garage with a ceramic floor, and he says he's tired of cleaning up battery acids, so he don't have to worry about that anymore. So there you go. EZGO 38 volt Eco battery conversions. Be sure to reach out to me for all your Eco battery needs, also Plum Quick motor needs. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Be sure to click and subscribe.